Hello traders, this is Alex with the Stock Matrix program. It's been a couple weeks, been pretty boring really. These creeping markets tend to, they don't break much. They just kind of whittle around. A few of the stocks go down, a few of the stronger ones make new highs, and that's kind of been the case. Um, let's take a look at my X account, my standard intro here. My handle is CBOT Man 33. I try to put out a lot of the trades that we've done, um, especially if it's, middle of the period. Now again, we're ending uh, this quarter moon period, and this next full moon period is important because it's one moon period prior to the lunar eclipse, right, which is the next full moon. So it's kind of an important cycle as we go back in time and look at it. But anyway, this is my X account. Let's take a look at the bar chart portfolio. Again, not sponsored by them, but they're a good company. You can check them out. But here's my portfolio. Not much change, just kind of there. Haven't really taken, we had a few trades that we, actually a lot of these were that we rolled because of time, right? And then they were losers. So, and then so far we have one bad trade on I don't like, which is the Microsoft trade, as we got a gap up and we got filled at a higher level than we would have been if the gap didn't occur. So this loss is mostly part of that stupid gap. Their AI was broken. This whole year I've been bitching about the AI. People think it's great. It's just programming, man. That AI is going to be hopefully people don't pay it too much mind because again, it's just programming, and they can lean to be a bear or a bull. If a company like Meta or Microsoft, especially Microsoft, Google, their platforms are all lean towards. They're not going to talk bad about their own company. If they want gaps, the Meta's gonna or the AI is going to cause gaps. Okay, let's move on. Let's go now to the portfolio. I mean the stock matrix program itself. Now this is the statistical page. Again, we're about 22 days prior to this next solar eclipse. So be pretty important. Now here is some annulars. Now, of course, we have a holiday in here, right? Labor Day. So, which is, let me look here. It's the 2nd, I believe. So a lot of these kind of fall a 3-day holiday, so there's not that many really, but for a 3-day holiday. But Google definitely has a pair in there. So does Amazon, and then Nvidia has 2 on the same date, both highs, by the way. Seasonality. And then we did make a new high in Google, and then also in BK, Bank of Magellan, and also JP Morgan. So we had 3 new highs Friday, and which, a sign of a bull, right? You got to continue to make new highs. Bull, as they say, the bull needs to be fed. So when the bull doesn't get fed, then you got to be a little cautious of retribution. Um, anyway, so that's where we kind of stand. And again, the next full moon, September 7th. Yeah, so this next full moon is the lunar eclipse, and that's then the next new moon after that then is the solar. And as we get into that, there are some repercussions for the next one coming up, which will be extremely short, but we won't get into that today. All right, let's go to Nvidia, and you can see the short-term trend is down, but it's right up here against the highs. We got stopped in basically on the low, which kind of makes sense. Now again, if it's going to just mess around, here's the one-to-one support. Here's the support from the old highs, so it makes sense time and price-wise that the solar eclipse could be a low, possibly just based on that logic. And a major break would be back into this zone, right, which is the last 2 solar eclipses. We got Meta kind of also broke, kind of had, up, and, highest close on the high day, and then kapoof, down she went. So this market is definitely bully, even though we're on the verge of getting short. This quick reaction, of course, here's this stupid gap up that we had. Well, I think it gapped up here. So just don't make sense in this day and age with AI. Freaking AI is supposed to be so damn smart. Judas Priest, they're fucking stupid. I would not use any AI that can't predict their own stock price, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, sorry. Here's Coke, kind of again, the chopper of choppers, really been chopping since the previous lunar eclipse. So it's been a half a year, right? Basically, lunar eclipse chops everything in half. So moon-wise, here is Google, one of the bulls. We did pop a new high, and once we broke above this one-to-one and this cardinal cross right between the 2 one-to-ones, once we did that, it's been up and away, TWA. We did pop new highs, but this is only the first close above it, so it'll be interesting to see. if it's a one-hit wonder or if it's going to keep grinding higher. Here's Microsoft, again, the bull of the bulls until it decided not. So now it did close back. It did have a higher close, and it did close above where we got short on that big ranging day, moon period. So now again, if you look back at my previous video, I was talking about, predicting where the range could go. Oops. We kind of, that was 34 by 4, and we put this in, so you can go back and look. Here's 34 by 4. So again, we kind of called that where the possible break could go. Now again, it didn't quite get there, but makes sense that if this is some big ranging top, you got to be a little cautious. Now, we don't know. When you get a top like this and it's wild, you don't know if it's going to make a secondary high. You could have a trap, right? A bull trap could go up here and pop out highs. You just don't know the activity, or it could just fall apart. I think the key is going to be Tuesday if we gap down or something, and we don't make a new high, right? At least get the short-term trend up, which would take, to get the short-term trend up, you need to get above 513.04. That would get at least the short-term trend up, which is, of course, what you need. Now, the stops did get pulled down, so the loss that we have is minimized. Here's Amazon kind of caught in a little triangle. I can't believe it hasn't made a new high, so it's a little concerning. I would have thought it would already popped it out. Not saying it's a bull, but normally you just don't leave those old highs lay. We did make the highs into the zone, and 225, 180, and here's 135, which was August 23rd, which was right in here, right? So again, you can see the zones are pretty key. Again, here's your cardinal cross. So again, this zone, this week that we just made, and the next one, which is the lunar eclipse, basis time. Now again, the price is down here, right? But basis time is pretty key as also. So I expect it to be some pretty good activity in Amazon this next moon period. Now there's not a lot of dates in there, right? September 7th for all these. You're only going to actually have 4 trading days. So not a lot of data there, so I expect it to be pretty fast, and it makes sense, right? The lunar eclipse, lunar full moon, lunatic, right? It comes from that terminology. I worked at a psychiatric intensive care unit back in my youth, and every full moon the hospital is full, every new moon the hospital is empty. So it just was the cycle of the mind. It does affect things. Traders no different. They load up, they put too much shit on, trying to hit a home run, and then they in baseball terminologies, they whiff, and then all of a sudden they lose a shit ton of money, and then they panic, right? Now, hopefully they panic quick instead of waiting and let it drag out, lose. Again, your equity is your lifeblood. That's why these options to me are so handy, because you don't worry, right? I might lose all my option money, right? But that's all you got to risk. That was Apple, kind of just there. Now, we did push the stops up a lot, right? It was down here, and now we're up here. So now we're profitable stops, of course, unless they gap because their AI is broken. I guess I can't bitch, can't forecast a bitch yet, but this stop, I forgot, looks like I didn't move this one right. It got moved to here, which is 310.90 on Tesla. So, we got long up here, so it's still a loss, but more of a manageable loss. I don't really like that too much. Here's the 1-to-1. We're kind of right into the zone. Here's your time crunch for your 1-to-1, your cardinal cross zone, right? The 1-to-1 crosses. Now you can see that if I drug this down to these other lows, right? So this is kind of where you logically could go. So again, it makes sense, right? Now here's your 2 solar eclipses down in here. So, but we're coming into a new one, so I guess it's a little less important as we get into it. But that new data point of the solar eclipse will be important, no doubt about it. Now let me put this one back. Here's Lynn. He's kind of there, just chopping, but just can't ever. We had a higher close and no follow through. So that told you to be awfully careful. It makes me feel like our stop is vulnerable to get hit again, right? You can see we've been hit several times. Profitability in Lynn is dissipating. Now we caught the bear, but got the bull, and then just got chopped to death. ED, kind of a slow bear, just a creeper bear, which makes sense, right? Because all the bulls like Meta and Google, they're creeping bulls, right? They're not just flying away. So this was the opposite, right? We made highs in ED, Edison Electric Company, when everything else was making lows. So again, opposites. So it makes sense. Now, again, I'm assuming we are going to take that out. I can't imagine why not. And actually, we've been down here in the recent future, earlier this year. So again, there's no reason why we can't go back down here. I don't know much about the fundamentals, but it makes sense that we could at least do that. And I would think if we did that, we'd probably make a new low. But maybe it'll be next year. The annular, right, will be around January 13th to January 6th zone. So it makes sense that that could come back into the future. I'm just looking here. January 3rd, January 10th, kind of the same zone for its annular. Here's Adobe. Just kind of there, we're bear market following this huge channel, went up to the 1-to-1 and failed again. The stops are maybe could be up a notch, but the system is what it is. So 1, 2, 3. The stop got moved over in time, but the price remained the same. It could have stopped us out, and it couldn't even do that, right? So now the Solar Eclipse is right there too. I thought for sure it would have popped it out at least to that. Anyway, but there is timing in there, and you can see that all these old highs are coming into effect. It's kind of hard to read them. But here's the one from the secondary event and from the high. So this zone right here into the lunar eclipse, which is what we're on, is a pretty important zone. So expect some fireworks. Maybe it'll be a rush bottom, blow all the stop kind of deal, and make some type of low, kind of like it did back here. Gap down and poof. IBM was the bull, and now it's a bear. This gap again because their AI was fucking broken. Judas Priest. How does that happen? A 10% break, really? In IBM, a smart freaking AI? Bullshit. Stupid criminal AI is what it is. Anyway, it just sets me off when I look at this chart. That started it all, by the way. IBM's the one that started it all. After that gap, they all gapped. Really? How's that? They can't calculate? They don't have a spreadsheet to do what the fuck do they know? What? Oh, Judas Priest. It just pisses me off. But you can see here, IBM did go back up to the solar and then kind of went back and closed steady. We've had several closes in the zone. So the short-term trend is up because, again, it takes 2 boxes above that. So, again, you can see that it did click it up. Short-term trends. And the stops got pushed way down, so we are semi-profitable. Now, of course, you can see we got stopped in down here, right? So I guess we're a little profitable, but still sucks because of that gap. Stupid gap. BK, the Bank of Magellan, continues to grind higher. You can see the stops got moved to here. Here's Procter & Gamble. Stops, kind of there. I don't really like that stop too much, but again, right on the 1-to-1, but the system does what it does for a reason. It takes less loss than I would normally take. Should go back and prove how many times if I would have moved the stop down and the system got stopped out, how many times I was right and the system was right. I guarantee the system's right more than I'm right. Here's JPM. Again, the diamond, I popped another new high. Struggling though, right? I mean, this just not really flying away like you would think a bull. This reminds me of kind of an inverted bottom. Inverted meaning now it's a top, right? That's the kind of action you see at lows on a lot of stocks, and JP Morgan is kind of inverting. So I don't know. I guess in all fairness, it's grinding just like the other markets, just like the indexes actually. It's like the S&P and Nasdaq and the Dow. Here's Coinbase. We did get to move the stop down to where we have it on, but again, that's still a loss because we got filled down here. But on a gap because their freaking AI's broke. Here's Cintas, just a creeper down. Now we got, if you're kind of a wave trader, right? This is a potential B leg, ABC. Now I would assume, which you shouldn't assume, and you can see that if here's the 1-to-1, from this low, which I don't have on there, but you can see that's on support. Again, we've talked about that breaking back into the solar eclipses, so it makes a little sense. And if you're waiting for a larger term break, you should have your antennas up and watching it a little more closely now as we get into the zone. And again, we're into a lunar eclipse. So you got time and price, so something to at least go on and just buying it because, right? I've told you all these markets that are up here, you don't buy new highs, not or strength, right? Now, back in the day when was in the beginning, yeah, you buy strength. But now when it matures and these bulls have matured, don't buy strength. You'll get plenty of opportunities. And if I'm wrong, there's like 800 other markets you can trade. Don't buy strength in Bitcoin. Don't buy strength in gold, right? I mean, you get breaks, you get wiggles. Just, if you got to buy, right, or you got to sell, either one, you'll get some opportunity. I'm not set in my ways. I let the system do the work for me. Used to be, back in the day, I always had to be right the market. Well, being right the market doesn't necessarily make you make money. That's the problem. You'd rather make money than be right the market. Let's switch now to the daily charts. Here's NVIDIA. You can see that actually this zone which is current, right? That's a couple years old. Was an actual low, and uh, and it was an outside day, so it had some power, right? It followed through another outside event here, which actually I believe is a double top. Let me see, 184.48, 184.47. So one tick off from a double top, good enough for government's work, and then it failed, right? So back to support, which again, this is a one-to-one slope. So again, how I measure, there's an actual mathematical equation to measure slope, but how I do it is, you take the low, which is 86.62, and there it is, 86.62, and you divide it by 100. So that's 86.652 is your speed line based on this low. So that's your, when I put this on there, that's what if you, in future ones or whatever, that's important, right? It's the one-to-one of the slope, or basically one-to-one of the low. Not one bar over for one bar up. It's not that, right? It's a little different. It's a one-to-one of the slope. So basically, you're kind of squaring out of the low in a sense, in hundredths. Anyway, I didn't mean to get too deep there, but you can see it. Possible top. Again, this is a good swing area. Now, if it made a new high, this would be a legit swing, but since it did not make a new high, a little less legit, but still important, right? You got to assume that if this is a high, the ABC correction could bring us down into some type of solar eclipse low pretty easy, I would think. Here's your meta. I don't know where all my time zones went. Hang on a second. Okay, I went back. I guess there was only two that, for some reason, I didn't save it on my chart. But anyway, we have one that came in, an annual from 2021 high, and I put them up here. It was a high from 2021 at 384. So, and then we have a low on the 4th, which was the all-time low, so pretty important, September 4th of 2012. So, pretty key. Now, there isn't any, so we got a void. After the 4th of September, we have a void until October 28th of any annulars. Now, Meta's been around a while, so it's pretty wild to have almost a month and a half of, or almost 2 months of no annulars. So the voids tend to trend. When you don't have any support and resistance on the annulars, it tends to trend. And then you get in November, and then it's back to 4. So pretty interesting. I don't know why that is, I guess. Let me get set back up here. So anyway, Meta is kind of back into this gap, halfway back. If it fills the gap, it makes sense a little bit technically. Again, it shouldn't have the freaking gap to begin with. Definitely Meta, right? Gee, that's priest. Freaking Facebook. Don't understand it. What a crooked crew. Freaking gaps. Here is Coke. You can see it's just kind of caught in the quagmire. If you're buying dips, selling rallies, which is the only way you can make money in Coke right now, short term. We're kind of, that low makes sense, right? You've had 4 or 5 dips where you could have bought, and then of course 2 or 3 day rallies, you got to get out, right? You're gonna have to be a trader to make any money on Coke. The long-term stuff's just getting abused. This is probably a one. Yeah, this isn't a one-to-one of the slope. And by the way, this Meta one, this is a 1/2 of the slope. I didn't post that, but that's what that is. Here's Google. Also, is a 1/2 of the slope, and kind of caught in the channel of that slope. So pretty key. I don't know why. Every once in a while I see the slope and then I kind of go with it. It's a weird one, right? Which I like. That's why I do the eclipses and why I do the quarter moons instead of charting a weekly chart, because it's a little different. You see things differently. Support and resistance come up. If everybody's the same, you're going to lose. You're not faster than the systems out there and the big computers that have speed on their side. So you can see, though, we kind of came into some annulars. Oops, dadgummit. Here's from 2010 low. So we have 2 annulars coming in on the 2nd, also from the 4th and 2004 and 2020. So one a little more current than the other, but it's just a bull, right? You make new highs, creeps down, makes new high, creeps down. 2 days, that's all you get. Makes a new high, creeps down. This is about an 8-dayer, looks like. So again, you get little breaks. So if you're a trading bull, this is what you're going to buy. No, or if you're pyramiding, which tough up in here. Hopefully you're not starting pyramid up here because you get killed. But because here's the history, right? I mean, let's look at a weekly. Yeah, I mean, pretty chippity choppity. This whole thing could be a potential high, or again, looking at it from maybe a longer term view, this is a halfway point, right? Which is how, as a bull, and not, again, Not a big fan of Google. I don't know how they make money, but if this is a halfway point on this thing, and this whole is a period of rest, then you got to assume that it's possible that this is your projection of your next zone up here at 270. So, which will take time. It's pretty slow, really. But now also you look at, I'm getting off here in a tangent. Sorry. You can see just a simple trend line is also right in the hunt up here shortly. So anyway, now again, don't know. System don't care about that, right? The stock matrix or any other system give a flying rip if that's a high or low. It just follows a line on the chart and goes with it. All right, let's move on. Here's Microsoft again, kind of just a stupid gap, really, and that's it. What? What the frickin' Microsoft? Frickin' evil Knievel, Judas priest. Another gap here, really. So you got to assume that it's a high. They fucked everyone up here at the frickin' stupid ass gap that's illegal. There's a gap here. What, they didn't know? I didn't know that it was going to be a bull. They don't know the data. Come on, what the? Anyway, so you got to assume this gap is now in target. We'll have some longer term break. I would assume that the bull is over until proven otherwise. Here's Amazon, kind of a big coil near the highs though, right? Again, I'm assuming that it's going to pop those out. I can't imagine it not. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But this is a fraction of a 1-to-1. So I don't know, probably 1/4 looks like. Here is Apple, just kind of there. We had some timing. You can see that later next week we'll have a bunch of stuff coming in. And of course the thirds, which are this important low, COVID break low. I've got those posted, and you can see that they do act pretty good and give you some opportunity. This one is defunct. Okay, let's move on. Tesla, kind of, again, extreme bear to a bull to a chop. So let's just take a quick little gander on some math here. From this low to this, that high to this low, let's just get something we can see. So again, for every action is equal but opposite reaction. From this high, to equal out this bear, or I guess we could do it from this low too. 120 is a kind of a nice Gann thing anyway. It kind of did, so, and kind of a low in here, but if you look at it from this standpoint, could stay choppy until after the solar eclipse. Now again, that doesn't matter, it's all bullshit. But you can see also that we have kind of a swing trade coming up here September 9th, along with all this stuff. We got a lot of annulars, so for a fairly new company, that's kind of odd. Here's Lynn, again, almost new highs, but not quite. It's not acting like it's overbought, right? This action, like it's a consolidational time break, right? Not a price break, but a time break, which is your most bullish, and the ones you want to buy, I would assume are going to pop out highs. The system should make a little money on that, hopefully, because it hasn't for the last 6 months. Here's ED, again, that bear. The bears, bullish when everything else was bearish on the 4th. The Googles of the world and NVIDIA were making highs on the 7th, so this was a counter trend trade. So it makes sense that we're down here banging against these lows. 99 days over from that high is August 27th. So again, it didn't do anything but bust it. Another one 44 days over, which again is my matrix, same zone, busted it. So this little high, even though you can't see much, these two little highs I think are pretty important to me. The system kind of has their stops there, so that's kind of key also. But that if it gets above that, I'm kind of friendly actually, ED. And which would mean then that if it would do that, that the other ones you got to be cautious on, right? The bull, it might be over if ED, now again, if, right? Here's Adobe, a lot of stuff, man. Holy crap buckets. It's going to be tough for this market to generate a bull. It's an old company, a contractual company with the government more than likely, and probably part of the issue. As they're finding out that, hey, we got 1 million Adobes contracted out to the government, but there's only 500,000 people. They're finding out that a $400 stock price, $350 stock price for a reason, right? Now, again, it's not Adobe's fault. It's the government's problem because they got to spend money. Here's IBM. Again, don't want to mention the criminal activity that occurred on the gap, but not one reporter has contacted IBM and said, why did your stock break 10% in one day during the week? Is your AI broken, sir, ma'am? Come on, frickers. Did you sell that up here? Did you make it break, sir, ma'am? Anyway, now it's in a little back rally, but what a dud. It looks weak here. It looks actually pretty weak. Let's see what this, I believe that's a fraction. Yeah, that's a fraction, like a 1/8 support. And, coming into some zones. The solar eclipse, we talked about this way back here, that this will be support. And now it is. Now we're coming into a new one. So, and here's your other previous one. So it could definitely break down to here, no sweat. Let me get a weekly so you get all that crap off of there. Yeah, you can see that just to chug it along, but the speed is faster. The rallies are the same, but the declines are faster. The sell-offs are faster. This is your main pivot. Holy crap buckets. You break that out and you got a swing break. Um, I don't know. It wouldn't look good. Let's go on BK, Bank of Magellan, the New York Bank, an old company. We're in a void of annulars. Now we have some monthly stuff, right, but no annulars to speak of. So again, it tends to trend. Procter & Gamble, a little bearish in the news, hence the break. But they got so many products, they get hammered on food coloring dye and something. They got a million other products. Easy. You look up how many products Procter & Gamble have. It's just a mess. It's scary. Same way with Smuckers and a few others, right? I mean, they just got a lot of products. So they get caught doing something illegal, no big hair off their ass. No one ever gets sued or fined anymore. And if they do, they've built it into their programming. All right, we did make a new high on JPM, but it's on the same zone. Let me see, did we close the new highs? This high was 301.29, and we closed at 301.42. So we did close the new highs on the 29th. So again, future reference if this is a high. Now it doesn't. We don't know that yet. If it grinds it out, now we're on to this. This is a 2x1. Again, a 202 was the low. Here's a 202. Divided by 2, right? That's 101. That is a 1/2 of the slope, but it's close enough. It could be considered 1-to-1, right? So you got a double math here. On this is important. We squared it out, right? So this is a squaring of price, not of time, but of price. So again, and you can see we made new highs, and we've been tested it out once, and really haven't tested it out anymore. So this creeper is weird, really. Again, kind of an inversion. The diamond is pretty political. Maybe caught in some corruption wash here in the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see how that bodes out. Of course, the diamond doesn't have control of this company anymore. It's the powers to be that control that company. He's just the face. Here is Coinbase. Again, another gap. Judas. Anyway, kind of consolidated. You can see the slope angles coming in here, both up and down. The solar eclipse will be kind of key. I mean, the previous solars are way down here, so I'm assuming that we're not going to break down to here, so I'm going to assume that we're going to have a higher solar eclipse close. So that's a trend up on now again, assume. We don't know. Now, here's Cintas. I've told you about this slower company, made a new high. Again, we had some gaps in there that weren't called for. Frickers. After the split, the market never breaks after a split. Poof, down she goes. Gaps. And that was the end of it, though, right? So we had an exhaustion on the gap. That's all the breaking is, 20%, 5 or 20 days or whatever it was, 22 days. So it's fast. But here we talked about this solar eclipse support. So pretty obvious to me. I don't know where hang on. I can't see it. I'm going to guess a little bit. So both solar eclipses are at the same price level, approximately. So it makes sense that this could be a low, right? Or, it could continue down, maybe go down a lower, but definitely some type of secondary event. We poke the high, so we have a trap. Now that tells me that the only place it could probably have another trap would be down here to take this out. So that's a long-term break, probably. Of course, this one didn't take very long. Let's just plot it on there for possibility's sake. Let's just go down to there. Good enough. Let's get something we can see. And from this furthest over high to the right, man, if that broke down there, that'd be quick, and it would just barely take it out. So again, possibilities. That is September 10th, right in the. Jesus, what is the September 10th is? That's right after the lunar. So I guess there's reason. I mean, there's possibility, and it's averaging that speed out pretty damn close. So be a little cautious on Cintas here. Don't buy this dip just because you needed to buy a dip. You might want to have it prove it to you instead of guessing. Let's look at the indexes here real quick. Here's the S&P, which kind of shows more of the creep. This pattern here is not bearish. This is a ascending triangle in the world of technicals. There's your parallel. So this ascending triangle is not bearish. Now it could be, right? I'm just saying it's going to be active. Could be a bear if it busts, but the logic, since we're above new highs, is that we're pinching out this pattern. And again, you can see it on the indexes more than sometimes the individual because it's a sum of all the parts. You know, S&P has a lot. Let's look at the Dow, which is a little slower, right? It's kind of more of a creeper because there's a lot less stocks. They're all world stocks, world stocks. And then there's the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ kind of shows a little poopy high or a triangle of some sort, potential, but looks kind of weird. It looks like a potential head and shoulders. It's pretty rhythmic to be that too, right? Same amount of days up and down. Now, again, you don't know that, right? That's where people get in the problem. Oh, I assume it's going to be head and shoulders. And then all of a sudden it goes up here and it's just a consolidational time break, right? Again, because you're guessing. Most people assume if they say it, it's got to be right, kind of thing. But this swing will be pretty key, you know, but it's back against the old highs. So just a creeper, right? I mean, pretty obvious. Now here's the QQQ. Again, kind of slowing down. It's bull. The problem with like these markets, the house with a poor foundation. This has no foundation of time. So if this creeper turns into a bear, it's going to get smashed. There's no foundation in that whatsoever. None. Zero. Zip. So knowing that, definitely, if you have a lot of positions on a certain stock, a lot of stocks, a lot of shares, I would buy options against those and maybe go out a year and just kind of play it safe. And then once if you have those on, you don't have to bail then, right? You kind of know where you're at. Or maybe let's say you own Smuckers. I have no idea, but you have that one, and you have 1,000 shares of Smuckers, and it's pretty much consumes your portfolio. Go buy 1,500 shares in calls, right? So that'd be 15 or puts. Excuse me, you buy 15 puts to cover that. You collect your dividend, go out a year, that kind of thing, right? That's an example of using those options. You still get the dividend, but it protects you, and you're actually going short, right? A few. So just a thought. That's how those options can help you. Let's do one quick look. Hang on. Okay, here's December gold weekly. Just December, not a spot. Pretty close, same probably. But you got this continuational chart pattern, which again we just talked about in a few others, right? That pinching of it was a time break. It never turned bearish, really, right? I mean, it never broke the trend line. It just all of a sudden broke in time. Now those are the most bullish. You can see we kind of had one here. Almost 4 or 5 months had a time break. This one had a little more serious break, but again, more of a time break as well. Those time breaks are really bullish. Let's take a look at one more. This is the weekly silver. Since a lot of people got a lot of silver out there, we did make a new high. It's acting a little more bullish. You can see though that we haven't made a new high in silver since 2011. So I got the experience between gold and silver spread is quite unique. People thought it would never stay out this wide. Silver. People that have silver. There's so much silver out there. I've got a lot of old customers from the commodity world that have a lot of cash silver, and none of them have any gold. So now the big boys carry gold. So what's again? Do you buy the dog with fleas? Or do you buy the primo? Well, it's proven over time. Same thing with Bitcoin versus altcoins. Bitcoin is performing better than the altcoins over time. Same thing with gold silver spread. Now, interesting. But anyway, that's it. I've run out my time. I thank you, everyone. And again, I haven't done a video. If it's going to be a creeper, I might not do a video for another 2 weeks also, unless something shakes here. Just a boring bull market that makes people a lot of money if they don't get too carried away. Everybody have a careful and next profit. And have a good holiday, too, by the way. Bye-bye.